To the September meeting of the Internet Developer Group. We have a very interesting talk tonight. I'll make just a few comments ahead of time. People continue to look at our archives, and we're now up to over 39,000 people have gone through the archives and reviewed previous presentations, which generally we have all the presentations back to when this group started back in 1998, so we've got quite a history. We're recording tonight's session, and we've recorded every session since October of last year. Not every session, we missed one, but almost every session since October of last year. So if your friends want to know about this, they can actually go and watch it in real audio right straight through. We show the whole session. Tonight's meeting should be very interesting from a couple of points of view. First of all, since we're Internet developers, we're interested about what's going on the Internet, and we have with us Josh Coates, who is the Director of Engineering and Operations for the Internet Archive. The Internet Archive is the group that runs the Wayback Machine, and if you haven't looked at your favorite domain, you can find out what it was doing back in 1998 and 1999 and how things have or have not changed since that time. For some of us it may be a little embarrassing, but we're unfortunately chronicled just the way we were at that time. He comes to the Internet Archive with a lot of experience. In 1999, he was a founder of a company called Scale 8 Storage Systems. It was a storage network that operated on 3 continents. See, I thought the 8 was the number of continents, then I realized when I went to school there were only 7 of them, so that wasn't it. Red Herring called him one of the top 10 innovators in 2001. He's had a lot of experience in the network storage and developed some of the caching routines, protocols used by Inktomi and other companies. So he should have a lot of interesting things to tell us, because the mission of the Internet Archive is to actually capture the Internet and be able to look back there, since the Internet is the greatest repository of all time at any given instant, and they want to capture the history of every one of those instances. It has to be a major challenge. Josh, thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome. Glad to be here. So, like Bill said, this is who I am, and I'll be talking a little bit tonight just about, this is kind of the agenda here, just an introduction to the archive. What is the Internet Archive? I'm going to talk a little bit about the collections that we have and some of the projects we're involved in. I'm going to talk a little bit about the data center that is the most recent project I'm personally involved in, and then just kind of wrap things up with some Q&A. So if you have any questions or comments, just jump in.
Okay.
So here's a question we like to ask people. What would you do with unlimited bandwidth, yet unlimited storage and unlimited CPU? Just think about that for a few minutes. What would you do if you had those things? It's not an obvious answer, I don't think. But I can tell you what a man named Brewster Cahill decided to do with this. He was lucky enough to, well, luck had a lot to do with it, he'll say, but I think a lot of smarts and ambition also had a lot to do with it. He was lucky enough to make a few $100 million, and you can get unlimited bandwidth and storage and CPU with that amount of money.
If not unlimited, at least a lot.
Yeah, pretty close. So in 1996, the Internet Archive was founded by Brewster Cahill. He's an engineer from MIT, and he worked on the Thinking Machine project. The CM2, he was the lead engineer for. Then he developed WACE back in the early 90s, sold that to AOL, actually. And then in 1999, I think it was, he sold Alexa Internet to Amazon. And the whole time it was really, both Thinking Machines and WACE and Alexa Internet were all kind of big vision, big picture types of ambitions. And he decided, look, I've been rewarded financially a lot for the efforts I've embarked on. The world's made an investment in me. So what's the return on investment? So he said, well, what I'm going to do is basically facilitate universal access to knowledge. And so that's the idea, is he wants to not just capture the Internet, but everything. The web's a good place to start, But as you see, he's really trying to capture all human knowledge. There's actually not that much recorded human knowledge. We have records, I don't know, going back about 6,000 years or so, clay tablets. There's not a lot of it. You know, most of the actual data that's been recorded has been in the last 100 years or so. But that's the deal. And just a little bit about myself. I was an engineer from Berkeley, went to Inktomi, worked on the caching projects, traffic server project. I started Scale 8, which is a large distributed storage company, and did that for about 4 years. And just this last spring came to the Internet Archive to help them sort of get to the next level in their infrastructure efforts, because as you can imagine, there's an enormous amount of technical resources required to archive all human knowledge. So these are our assets, or liabilities, is kind of I think of them. We have 2 data centers. We have over 600 systems online. We have 300 terabytes of data. We have over 4,000 disks. We have a couple services. The main one is the Wayback Machine. And we have text, audios, and movie archives as well that are service-based. We're growing at about 40 terabytes a month. And that's this year's growth curve. But of course, the year before and the year before that, it's a lot less. But it's 40 terabytes a month is a lot to add. But with disk densities and the pricing, it's actually, you can fit 40 terabytes in about half a rack, maybe a full rack of machines. So it's not a lot of machines, but it's a lot to think about every month. We also have a third data center, which isn't really ours. It's in Alexandria, Egypt. And we put that in a couple years ago, helped the government there in Egypt get this data center online. And the idea, Brewster, I think he is wise in the idea that, well, see, libraries like to get burned. That's what people do with libraries, pretty much, is over time, the last few thousand years, when someone shows up and says, okay, this is our land now. Where are the libraries? Let's burn them. And that's kind of what happens. And so in Alexandria, that was kind of the Internet Archive of that age. And that got torched. And Brewster doesn't want that ever to happen again, because torching that library set us back who knows how many thousands of years. You know?
Let me ask you a question. What are you defining as information? Because
that's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's hard to articulate what is human knowledge. Right now we're trying to archive human knowledge that's already been recorded in some form. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things like, well, what I'm doing now, right? I'm talking, so you can say, well, that's part of human knowledge now. And the fact that we're recording it kind of puts it in that category.
Right.
But there's so much information that has been recorded that's basically rotting, that's not accessible. It's in a vault somewhere. And if you can't access it, then what's it good for? Write-only memory isn't useful. And unfortunately, a lot of what we have in this world is write-only memory. And so the idea is, well, 2 questions. Why do you want to save it if you can't access it? And the other one is why do you want to save it anyway?
Well, I get into the staggering thing because there are guys that have a project like Life Bits, where they figured that every individual has, their life can be defined in 2 or 3 terabytes. I mean, if we could take a movie of them for their whole life, we'd have 3 terabytes. So you're growing by 20 people a month.
Yeah, at the appropriate bit rate, that's true. I read several articles on the idea of can we record our whole lives, the visual and audio and everything, and it's certainly feasible. It might be a little creepy, certain parts of our lives, but for the most part, I mean, it can be a pretty interesting way to keep a journal. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that libraries get torched. How do we save libraries? We have to keep them independent of governments, because you never know what's going to change. So the fact that there's an archive in the U.S., heck, 20 years from now, Who knows what the U.S. government's going to be like? What if they suddenly say, you know what, we don't like this whole universal access thing. Let's shut off the Internet Archive. So what we want to do is have it spread around the world to different governments. And that way, I'm not sure Egypt's most stable government in the world, but it was sort of symbolic. Alexandria, hey, let's fire that up again. Let's revive the library. We're looking at Amsterdam perhaps for the next one. Yes?
Where are the other two?
The other two data centers are in San Francisco. One is on Mission Street, and the other one's over near the ballpark.
It's not too stable.
Well, there are earthquakes.
And you got the government up there, too.
Well, that's actually, that's another good point.
Really?
So we're definitely interested in keep the archive in Egypt is we made a complete copy of everything, sent it over there, I think in 2001 maybe. So we're about a year or two out of sync with them, and it's a beautiful library there, digital library. Their culture is less accepting of certain things, and so dropping it off there, someone joked, and this is sort of Internet Archive lore, I wasn't there. Some admin said, well, there you go. You guys now have the largest collection of pornography in the world. And the Egyptians sort of went, what? Oh, no, I'm just joking. Well, not really joking. I mean, you really do now. And they went, holy cow, we can't, that stuff's not legal in Egypt. It's a big deal. So we actually had to sever all the access links to a majority of some of those websites. Personally, I'm not sure that stuff's worth archiving, but the idea is let's just archive everything, and we'll sort it out later. But anyway, so those are our data centers. So they're growing fast. Okay, so web, text, audio, moving images, software. We'll be going through each of these parts of the collection. So this is a picture of one of the oldest data centers that actually no longer exists. These are rack-mounted machines. We don't use rack-mount machines anymore. We actually just use regular old desktop-type machines in the plastic boxes. We have about 6 years of web, about 20 billion web pages, like I said, over 300 terabytes. So it's much more text than the Library of Congress. Library of Congress, I think, has maybe 23 million books, or 20-something million, 30-something million books. Not that much, yeah.
When you save all this, do you also have a system for how you can find it?
No, we just kind of throw it. No, of course we do. Yes, yeah, we index all the data. And I was talking with Bill earlier. He said, "Well, it doesn't seem like you have a lot of 2003 information. We have a lot of 2003 information. It just hasn't been indexed, so it's not accessible. In other words, it's scattered somewhere on the system, and we have to go through and harvest it, and then create indices to access it. And so, for the web, the Wayback Machine, it's done on crawls. The web is crawled. Actually, the crawls are done by Alexa Internet, which still exists within Amazon. And Jeff Bezos is sort of like, hey, Alexa Internet, little group of guys in San Francisco. We had great ideas when we bought you for $1 zillion a few years back. Those didn't work out. You guys aren't hurting anybody. Yeah, keep archiving the web. So that's kind of the deal. I don't know what that has to do with books, but that's kind of, he doesn't mind. So they continue to crawl the web and give us the crawls. They keep a copy for their data mining projects, and then we keep a copy for archiving.
And that's your source.
That's our source. The idea, the deal was we'll have a 6-month lag, just because we're not a commercial entity, we're a nonprofit organization. If the data's 6 months old, that'll kind of deter us from getting